Pittsburgh Steeler fans, welcome back to another episode of the Scho Bro Show. This is behind the steel curtain editor Dave Schofield coming at you again on Tuesday night. It's just after 9, and I can't say, as always, we've been off a little bit for the last couple weeks, but we're back for a regular show tonight. And with me, as almost always, is my big brother Rich. How you doing tonight, Rich?
I've been here every Tuesday night for I don't know how long. You were the one that bailed out a couple weeks ago. Hey, things are going well tonight. After several days of very, warm, humid temperatures here in the mountains, the current temperature is somewhere in the 50s. So it's nice and chilly out. Well, I wouldn't say chilly out, but it's chilly compared to, 86 and 90-something% humidity the other day.
I know what you mean. It's in the 60s here where I am, and it's like, this is like, it almost feels like fall football weather.
Like springtime. Yeah, there you go. Football weather.
Yeah, fall football weather. That's what we're talking about. That's what I thought it was like. But yeah, it's short-lived. It's going to get hot again this week. But all
right, before we get too far, I got to address a couple people in the live chat. Live chat already.
Okay.
Double HH and, Michael O'Malley in there, talking about, hey, what's going on? Somebody must be delayed or out, Thanks, Double HH. No, the delay, believe it or not, was because of Dave and my communication issue we had on the topic of the show tonight. Dave had texted me the topic for the show tonight, but he had put the actual title more in the Slack channel. I missed it in the Slack channel, picked it up on the text, and I didn't read them both. They were not both exactly the same, so I read them differently. So Dave had to call for me for a minute so that I could get my list right.
Well,
because my was not right.
It's kind of like this. Have you ever read a synopsis of a book? But the title actually gives away a little bit to what it's about, and without the title and the synopsis, you might not get the whole story. And I just I thought you had the whole story. I thought I was giving you more in depth to expand on what was already said. And here you didn't see what was said in the first place, but we got it. We're together. We're going to do our thing. We do have to say
that's all that matters.
Yeah, we were here together last week, but last week's show was very different. If you didn't catch last week's show, make sure you go back, whether you catch it on YouTube or go back and listen to the audio on the podcast. Leading up to Father's Day, we had Sam Highsmith, Alex Highsmith's father, on the show. He was here for the full time, the full hour plus with us, just talking being a dad with the Steelers, just, Alex's journey, just how he interacts with other people as part of the Steelers family. It was a great time, wasn't it, Rich? It was just talking.
It was. Yep. It was a great time. And, might as well let everybody out there, that's listening know he hung around and talked to us for another 20 minutes after we were done.
Yes, he did. We had a good old chat.
It was great. So, if you missed that, definitely try to go back and catch it somewhere. It was really, it was a different kind of show for us, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was just an idea that I had that I'm like, I'd like to kind of do something for Father's Day, leading up to it. And I asked him to come on our show, with you and I being brothers, it's kind of that dynamic and kind of family-esque, if you know what I mean. So I thought it was a good one. So Sam came on this show. I mean, I offered him that he could come on, whichever night was best for him. And luckily it worked out to be here. And it was just a great time, just very enlightening. He even, if you're listening in podcast form, then you missed it, because we there's only so much you can do. He actually showed us some pictures of Alex from high school, showed us, kind of how he was built early on, then how he filled out into his junior year, a lot of things, just a really good time. But we can move on from that. We spent so much on that last week. As you could tell, we had a great time, so we could talk about it again tonight, but we're not going to. Man, we are in it. We are in the last part of the offseason. This is the off of the offseason, if you know what I mean. This, from the time mini camp ends to the time training camp begins, you got nothing. And most everything is when it's no news is good news. The only thing that's happened since minicamp was one player came in for a visit on Friday that was reported, which then, of course, set up some red flags. Why would the Steelers need to bring in a former Pro Bowl right guard? That some questions arose with David DeCastro. I wrote an article for the website. Do you want to throw out anything about that, Rich? We have one other thing to talk about with news-wise, but specifically about Trey Turner coming in. He had a bad year last year. He really did. He did. Out of all the guards that were ranked in PFF, he was next to last. He was by far the worst run blocking guard of anyone that took a snap in the NFL last year, according to PFF. I'll leave it at that.
Did that have anything to do with his change of scenery for last year?
Maybe. Because he was traded. It's not that he, went and signed somewhere else. He was traded for Russell Okung, went from the Panthers to the Chargers, and it just might not have been a good fit. Notice there's no contract, so take it for what it's worth. But I threw out several hypotheses about why they could be doing it. It was on the article at BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. Your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers. But anything else about that? I didn't want to make it seem like I cut you off or anything.
Nope. That was it.
Yeah. The only other thing is where in almost everything that happens right now, no news is good news. There's only two pieces of news that we want to hear between now and training camp. One is finally getting Kendrick Green signed because he's the only draft pick that hasn't signed. This was an article I did a while ago. When I started to research it, I realized, wow, there's only like a couple players out of this was at the time. Some more may have signed since, but of a gap of about 25 players in the third round, there was only 2 of them that were signed. So it's that there's just it's how things fall in line based on everything else with the rookie scale and everything. But the other one is the news that hasn't happened yet, and that is we're trying to count down to training camp. Yeah. They haven't made the announcement yet.
Oh,
what do you think, Rich?
They're going to Latrobe. Forget it.
Okay.
They're the Steelers. That's where they go.
Yeah. Okay. I guess they're still waiting.
I like to tell myself, didn't they have a day where they couldn't find them last year or something? Where are the Steelers? Yeah, they were in Latrobe. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm using the date as the date that the NFL said that the Steelers could start, and that's July 21st. That's what we're counting down to when we started our countdown to stuff at BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. We've got daily articles. We've got one in the morning, one in the afternoon. Jeff Hartman, and I'm involved with both of them. Jeff Hartman and I are counting down 30 scenarios in 30 days. It's basically, we have to give a prediction of it. You can call it 30 predictions in 30 days. So we give a scenario one day, and then we say a little bit about both sides and then what we think will happen. Jeff started off with, not Najee Harris. Will he break Franco Harris's rookie records? Mine, which was out today with day 2, was saying will the Steelers get to 60 sacks this year with the extra game and everything else? So that's the series we have going on. Then I'm jumping in to help out Michael Beck because I didn't want him to be too overwhelmed with it. Because based on his, when he did this last year, Michael was doing more writing for the website before he took over the social media stuff. So he only has half the articles that he used to have. And last year he wrote 90. Yeah, we'll get to that one. 90 articles about the entire offseason roster, and it went well into training camp and everything else. This year we're calling it the Steelers trifecta because we needed to do something that was meant 3, is that 3 players a day we're covering for the Steelers offseason roster. So Michael did yesterday's, I did today, he has tomorrow. We're basically going kind of every other day. We have a set schedule with that. So make sure you're checking out those things. But we're counting down to the 21st. I did see one thing about training camp before I get back to what you put on the screen. And that is, I did see that in the memo sent to the NFL that players are not to interact with fans at training camp. So coming through and getting autographs and things like that is not supposed to happen this year unless they come out and change that. So, did you want to say something about what you brought up there, Rich?
Dave stirred up the pot with an article.
I did, but did you read my explanation?
Just so you know, I read your explanation, but I didn't even find the article and get the time to go look at everything because I told you I was pretty busy at work yesterday. And, but that it turns out, I was talking about missing what David put in the Slack channel. Yeah, that was yesterday. And the Slack channel was blowing up over Dave stirring the pot with his article. So,
okay. So I know we need to get into our topic, but since you brought it up, I have to say it. The title of the article was, "Are miserable Steelers fans really fans of the Steelers?" And I laid out what I meant by a miserable Steelers fan. That I said, you have realistic Steelers fans and things like that. I'm talking where you take it to the next level. I'm talking about that guy that in, being around them for years, you have yet to hear one positive thing about the Steelers. They don't cheer. The Steelers could win the Super Bowl and they're going to talk about, they have too many free agents. They'll never repeat. 30 seconds after the clock hits zeros. The Steelers could win a game. I gave the example of 38-0 because I didn't want to bring up a specific example, if you know what I mean. And people were still going to complain about how they didn't score more points. They had to settle for a field goal. They should have got a sack on where instead they gave up a 3-yard completion on 3rd and 17. Things like that, that even when everything goes right, all you want to talk about is what's wrong. And that was the question. And people started to get upset. And the community manager said today to me in an email, it's like they didn't read the whole thing or they made up their mind partway through. Because what I said halfway through was, yes, they are still real fans. They still are fans of the Steelers. They just do their stuff in a different way. They express themselves differently. People. Yeah. And I'm like, and it's just kind of like other things with life. And we need to understand that we're not all the same, but they also have to understand that those of us that are, and I went and listened, like there's some people that are crazy enough they dress up when they go to games. Guilty. I do, people that are really crazy and optimistic and things like that. That's me. But you have to realize that if you want to be nothing but miserable, then other Steeler fans might not want to be around you. And there are some people that took offense, probably because some of them were fans that are more realistic, and the other ones took offense probably because they needed to. But there was more to that story. That is not what I intended to do with that. I started writing that article on Saturday. Yeah, that was my Sunday article. And Jeff saw the title and said, "Oh, that's going Monday. That will create some good discussion." Well, yeah, a little bit. But really, tell him how the story would have ended. I'll tell him what the story really was. The story really was the big reveal of the story was I was talking about my father. Yep. Not necessarily how my father really was, but how as a young person I perceived my father. I'm 4 years younger than Rich, so I might be a little bit more extreme to it than he was. He might have seen my father actually cheer for the Steelers. I asked myself at times, I wonder if my dad hated the Steelers. My dad grew up out in Massachusetts. He ended up in Western Maryland because that's where my mom was from. The Steelers, I mean, we had an antenna. All we had was 4 channels, all from Pittsburgh. So the Steelers were what we watched. There were times I wondered, I'm like, I guess dad doesn't like the Steelers because he never had. Now, granted, this was the 80s and early 90s. There wasn't much good to talk about.
There was not a lot good to talk about.
But that was my perception of my father. Now, as I got older, one of the best experiences I ever had was when I took my dad to our first NFL game. It wasn't even the Steelers. I didn't really want to go see a Steelers game with my dad because of that. We went and watched the now known as the football team. And my dad was a blast. He definitely didn't like Washington because that was his best friend's favorite team. So he liked to knock on them. So I thought we were going to go cheering against them, but nope, we were cheering for him. My dad, he was crazy. He's chanting with fans. And it was a different side of my dad with the game of football that I'd never seen before. So then when I finally took him to our first Steelers game and everything, and to see my dad in that light was just so rewarding and everything. And now every time we talk, the first thing we talk about is the Steelers, it seems like. But I also wanted to give people a cautionary tale of, if you're trying to pass your love for the Steelers on to the next generation, you need to show them that you actually love the Steelers, because that was the whole point of the piece. But when Jeff said he wanted to run it Monday and it wasn't Father's Day, I'm like, I wasn't sure if I should talk about my dad like that, which that I do on a podcast. So I took that as a sign of, well, I'll just leave it as the question Jeff wanted to talk about. So that was the story.
Just nice to know that after that story, now that I'm Dad's favorite.
Yeah. Yeah. Like,
it probably was you, but it's me now.
I talked to our father earlier, and all he did half the time was talk about you. So, but that's what it was. And it was kind of the whole notion of people that are always down on the Steelers. That's not new to me, because that's what I felt like growing up. So that's what I was saying. And I'm not going to question their fandom, because I later saw how much of a fan my dad was when he had got to experience other things.
Hold on. I'm going to answer Jerry Cherrybands, since he's such a great help to BTSC. Jerry Cherryband wanted to know who Washington was playing. If I remember correctly, are you talking about the game you and Dad saw, football team, then at the time Redskins versus Eagles?
That is correct.
Okay.
I still don't know which year it was.
I don't remember either.
It was either 04 or 05. I know it was a Sunday night game in Washington, and they played them on Sunday night in Washington both years. I think it was the second one, because I don't think they won. But I went to more games in Washington with my dad. I talked about it on the Father's Day podcasts that were out. So you could always check that out. But if you're wondering why Rich said that about Jerry Cherryband, if you are only here on YouTube and Facebook and don't listen to our audio shows, our morning shows, Let's Ride, that goes Monday, Wednesday, Friday, the Live Mic on Tuesday, Steelers Stat Geek, which is my show, on Thursdays. We have music for our intros and everything, courtesy of the Jerry Cherryband. Other than the Live Mic, he does some weird Canadian stuff. So we got a super chat before we get on to this.
Yes,
so
better get that. It's
Hey, Felicia. She said, Dave, stop. I thought that sounded like you were talking about Lance Williams, the hater. Love the show. Bye, and I got to go. No, I'm not. No. Because
here's the deal.
I'm not talking about a hater, because you can be realistic, and you can say when the Steelers do things well and when the Steelers don't do things well. And that's okay.
But I don't think I ever once in Lance questioned his Steeler fandom.
Never.
We're talking about those folks that you start to think, are they really a fan, or are they just, pretending to play one on TV?
Everything that you hear about them, about the Steelers, is bad. And basically, if you took off their black and gold and put them in dirty baby diaper brown and orange, you wouldn't notice any difference.
Right.
So, because all they want to do is talk about how the Steelers aren't good, everything, the sky is always falling. And, I mean, there's a difference between, it's like, is there much of a difference between what was me or someone else saying, take off this hat, put another one, and say, yeah, you suck? That's basically, you're hearing the same narrative from both types of fans. And that's, so Felicia, I know you said that, and I know you said it in jest, but I do want to make sure I do that. That is 100% not who I would never say that about Lance. I would never question his fandom. He is who I would put in the realm of a, I don't know if I'd, somewhere between a realistic fan and a pessimistic fan. In other words, like,
Lance was a critic.
Yeah. Well,
like, he was very much going to critique. And what is the easiest thing to critique? Flaws.
Yes.
There you go.
Let's just say this. If, I never had the pleasure of watching a game with Lance, but if there was a play going on and it was, let's say it was 4th and 4 and the Steelers are in 5 wide, shotgun, everything else. Okay. The optimistic fan thinks they're going to get it here. The pessimistic fan says there's no chance they make this. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, but it doesn't mean, you're saying when you're moving into something that's the way it's going to be. So this was just a nice discussion. I saw that the live chat was in on the discussion, and I know we do want to roll into our topic, which is a kind of a lot of fun tonight. And it's talking about, I got to make sure I changed what word I used, but I wanted to make sure I got this right. Who could be the Steelers training camp darling? Now, I use that term for those of you that come around BTSC, BTSC. Let's see if I can get all the letters out there. At the website, you may be familiar with that. Every year at the end of training camp, we issue, in recent years, what they call the Isaac Redman Award. And that's a player that has kind of came out of nowhere and everyone was talking about in training camp. This is kind of like this, but not exactly, because the Isaac Redman Award, there's some criteria to that, like where you were, if you were drafted, you had to be drafted in one of the last rounds, or not, you couldn't have a year of experience of actual playing in NFL games or things like that, or you could have more than one. I don't even remember what they are, but we weren't saying that because we didn't want to, handcuff ourselves. We're talking about who's that player that everyone's going to get all talking and excited about in a good way, meaning that you're going to hear more than what you maybe should.
Who are we going to be talking about on Tuesday nights during training camp? Really?
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
Who are we going to bring up like, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
exactly.
In the month of August at 9 p.m. on Tuesdays, who's going to be the topic of discussion? Oh my goodness. I can't believe blah, 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 blah. You're exactly right. If you want an example, think 2 years ago, Tuzar Skipper. That's a good example. He was a guy, came out of nowhere, and it doesn't have to be a come out of nowhere guy. Last year's Isaac Redman winner was actually UG3. That was Shannon's guy. My guy should have won it, and I showed during the season that I was right. My guy was Ray McLeod, because even though he was drafted by another team, he was a cast off the Steelers brought in, and he was going to come in and make the team and do something. So that's the kind of stuff we're talking about. So Rich, we're going to start working through this. Did you count yours down in order? Or do you just have 5 in general?
No, I pretty much can go in order.
Okay. So we'll start with you. This is what we've been doing. We like doing these 5s and count them down because it's a lot of fun. So,
all right. So I'm going to start with 5. My number 5, you might raise an eyebrow at a little bit that I've put this person in there. But after I say the name and I go into my explanation as why this person's there, it's going to make a lot more sense. I went with a second-year player for number 5. Will be the son of Sam, Alex Highsmith.
Oh, okay. The son of Sam. Alex Highsmith. Okay.
Reason being, first of all, we got a little teaser. Mm-hmm. We've seen that extreme physique that has found its way onto social media. That gets the buzz going. Okay. Bud Dupree, now gone. He's expected to step in, be the starter. Everybody's wondering, what are we going to see? If he comes into camp with that, now I'll call massively built physique, and just starts to dominate and things like that, we're going to hear a lot of Alex Highsmith talk.
Exactly. So, okay.
So he set it up with this social media stuff on, seeing he's been working out and what he's been doing. Now we'll go.
Yeah, you're people are like, wow.
I crack people up. Yeah.
What a nickname.
Yeah.
Sam. Wow. I don't know if that's I don't know if that's a nickname he would like. I'm going to say this. I thought about Alex Highsmith for one specific category. I left my number 5 player that I specifically wanted to do a player that wasn't a rookie, but has also been talked about a lot during the offseason. And I feel Alex Highsmith fits into that category.
Yes.
And I'm like, that's what I wanted to do for a number 5. And I almost did Highsmith, but I went with someone else.
Okay.
So I kind of tipped it off that Highsmith's not on my list, but he was considered for that reason. And I love your explanation. The one I went with was the new Steeler, Dwayne Haskins.
And okay.
I think a lot of people now, the only thing that could keep him off this list is if he looks like he did in Washington. He's got to play well to get there. And that's why I definitely wouldn't put him higher, because he really has to come. And that's honestly the next person I have on this list is the same way. This is assuming that they, if they start playing decent, everyone's going to talk about them. So,
well, and I can understand why you put him on there too. Which, Actually, if you're all right, I'm going to go ahead and name my number 4. My number 4 was Dwayne Haskins.
Okay.
Okay.
So we're thinking on the same wavelength.
Yes, we are thinking on the same thing there. He's going to potentially get the opportunity to be talked about a good bit because he's going to see a decent number of snaps in the preseason.
Yeah.
Exactly. He's very likely to see a decent amount of snaps in the preseason. And if he comes in and makes the most of that time, we will be talking about him a lot.
Yes. And honestly, I'm going to be wrong one way or the other, because either he's not going to be on someone talked about in a good way, and he doesn't make this list, or I'm going to be wrong where I said I didn't have him as the third quarterback on the Steelers roster. I still had it as Josh Dobbs when I predicted that with Jeff Hartman weeks ago. We got to do another one of those here before training camp. And where I'm saying until I see him in black and gold doing things, I'm going to say he has to unseat Dobbs. That's just the way I look at it. So I'm probably going to be right and wrong. I'm going to go 1-1 because I'm basically betting opposite things right now, if you think about it. So that was your 4.
Typical Dave answer.
Yeah. No, this is a whole different question. This is a whole different question. But what I'm saying is, I don't know what to expect. Like someone said in the live chat, it's already gone up, so I can't say who it was. Is he a Paxton Lynch? Is he a Paxton Lynch that came in first round draft pick, see if they can revive something at Pittsburgh? Didn't work out. My thing is, or is he a Ryan Tannehill? Is he a player that didn't, although Tannehill was much longer in Miami, than Haskins was in Washington. But even after getting a big contract, he was just never really the guy. And they eventually moved on from him. And then he's found success somewhere else. Yep. So we will see. I think it's good that we both had him on our list. He has the potential. Trust me, if he plays well, he's going to get talked about. So I think you're right. My number 4 is, I already saw it in the live chat, but I had mine written down way before you all, is I have one Shakur Brown or Shakur. I might have mispronounced it. Cornerback. What's that?
That's who I was considering at number 5.
Yeah.
For Highsmith. So
gotcha.
We're in the same.
We're in the same ballpark. Yep. He's a cornerback, undrafted, out of Michigan State. There were people on the website, BehindSteelCurtain.com, your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers, that were talking about him as a late round draft pick. Mm-hmm. And the Steelers got him as an undrafted free agent. Yep. So there is potential there at the cornerback position, whether it be, in the nickel or just adding for depth. Is he going to be to the 2020 Jamespierre that is basically on the team, plays special teams, and continues to develop and gets a little bit of playing time later on? I don't know that he's ready to step. I don't know that an undrafted guy is going to come right in and week 1 be your slot corner. That might be way too much to ask. I'm just saying I think he's going to get talked about enough in a good way that he could either A, make the 53, or B, definitely stick around with the practice squad if he doesn't get poached, and be someone that we'll be talking about again next training camp. You want to say anything else about him?
Nope. Good.
All right. So you almost had him. So we're going to go ahead. Let's go ahead and do number 3, our number 3s before we do our break, and we'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll polish them off. So,
all right, my number 3 would be someone you happened to just mention. Would be one Jamespierre.
Oh, all right.
Jamespierre, I think we could be talking about, because I think, to no one's surprise, he is going to be potentially pushing for that starting corner spot on the opposite side of Joe Hayden.
All right. You are going to hear this. It won't be tomorrow because we're already, scheduling out stuff. Our Vertex this week is going to be coming out Thursday, and we're talking about our loss versus gains. And it was slot corner. And I, from the stats point, didn't even talk about gains. I said, I'm just going to look at the loss because I don't know what the answer is, because I don't know that the Steelers have figured out the answer. Jeffrey Benedict is really on board with Jamespierre being the slot corner. I thought, oh, well, he could play on the outside and Cam Sutton could slide in. And he's got me sold now that Sutton is great to play dime, but he's not physical enough to play nickel up on the line and blitz everything. And that he thinks that as physical as Jamespierre plays in the limited time that he got, that he's someone who could bring that physicality and could actually be there. I'm not calling that. That's what Jeffrey's calling, but I tell you what, I'd love to see it. So that's pretty interesting that you went with Pierre there. And I could totally see that. I went a little bit different route because I went with the 2021 draft pick.
Yeah.
And I went with a high draft pick.
Oh, really?
A somewhat high draft pick. I went with Kendrick Green.
Okay.
I think Kendrick Green, everything that he does is going to be talked about. And the positives are going to be brought out big time because people are going to look to see if he's going to be the guy that can come in and replace Marquise Pouncey and how soon he's going to be ready to do that. So I think he's going to be a guy that gets a lot of positive buzz.
Okay.
So anything you want to say there, or do you need to, or are you good?
I'm okay.
Okay. You're okay. Well, with that, we're partway through and we're halfway through the show. So we're going to go ahead and take our break here. If you're listening on the audio side, go ahead and click on over to part 2. If you're here on Facebook or YouTube, just hold on for a few seconds and we'll be right back so we can each give our top 2. So stick around. Pittsburgh Steeler fans, we are back with part 2 of the Scho Bro Show. I am still Dave Schofield, editor behind thesteelcurtain.com. And with me, as always, is my big brother, Rich. Rich, you doing good?
Oh, yeah. I'm just sitting here looking through the live chat, and people are putting up other names, and I'm sitting there thinking, oh, man, I could have put that guy on my list.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
I could have put that guy on my list.
I went through at least a dozen. But, hey, now, I don't know if you listened to the other shows and everything to catch. Did you notice my intro is a little bit different this week?
I did.
Yeah. Okay. For those that haven't caught up to it yet, is that I am now the editor behind the Steel Curtain, not the co-editor. Lost the co-title, so Anthony Davis can't call me the co-ed anymore. But I'm not going to say what we call him. But that's because I kind of insisted that we, give Jeff a little bit more elevated status based on that he's the elevated guy. Jeff is now the senior editor behind the Steel Curtain, and I'm the editor. That's why it's not like I changed anything. I just don't have anyone right there I just want to make sure that Jeff is he pours his heart and soul into the website, and it's just that we wanted to make sure that we're continuing to acknowledge that. So that's why. So we're here. We're going on. We
kind of know what you now since Bad can't call you co-ed anymore, and you said we won't say what we call him. What do you call him? Special ed?
No, who? No, Bad, not Jeff. Oh no, he's the podcast producer.
Oh,
we call him we call him by his abbreviations. So that's what Jeff calls him. So, as Rich just shakes his head. So
okay.
Now, there's still some people in the live chat talking about my article from yesterday, where we had talked about that a little bit, about different types of fans. And I know AJ had asked a question about what about a moderate fan? I tell you what, you're all fans. You really are. You don't have to be the optimistic. You don't have to be the moderate. You don't have to be the realistic. You don't have to be the pessimistic. You can even be the miserable fan if that's really who you want to be. And there's probably other categories that I haven't even thought of the list. We're all Steeler fans. Well, we just need to understand that we just all express it in different ways. So that's how it works. Rich.
I'm a different, see, I'm a very different fan sitting and watching a game on TV than I am here on the podcast or just talking to people in general about the Steelers to how I am at a Steelers game. I am probably, I say more bad things about the Steelers when I watch them on TV sometimes.
Because when they frustrate you. Come on.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I know what you mean. Well, that was ingrained in you as a child. That's what you did with the Steelers were on.
Correct. Our father, see, you got to remember, see, you don't remember all the way back when I was, 5 and 6 when Dad was still a pastor, so his word for the Steelers was, typical Pittsburgh. He's kind of bum. They're a bunch of bums.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bums. But in the 80s, they were a bunch of bums.
There's only ever one guy there in the 80s that I really remember my dad getting excited about. Mm-hmm. And that was Mike Merriweather.
Oh,
no,
okay.
Mike Merriweather.
Merriweather. Hey, I have to bring this up.
Okay.
Because Wes Hickok, a regular on here, says, does it get more hardcore than almost spiking your infant child when Santonio Holmes toe taps in the end zone? What's crazy is that was my daughter's first Super Bowl. I had an infant child. My oldest child was that Super Bowl. And normally at night, she would lay on me to fall asleep. And she could not settle because I was not settled. So when you talk about almost spiking your infant child when that happens, if that was you, then you and I are basically following the same path, because I experienced the same thing.
Mine was slightly different. Now my children were a little older at that point in time, not a whole lot, but but they were in bed in the very next, very close by where I'm sitting and watching the game. My bigger reaction actually was on the Larry Fitzgerald touchdown when I jumped up, wanted to yell and scream at the TV, but instead just took a cushion off the couch and slammed it into the floor so hard I thought it was going to explode. Now, of course, I was very excited on the Santonio Holmes touchdown catch, which of course went to review, to which at that point in time,
I wasn't really excited. No, it wasn't when it happened, because you didn't think he got in. And then you start saying, I think maybe he did. I think maybe he did.
I called Dave, okay? Because I had just bought the week before an HD TV. So I was watching basically my first football game in high def. And when they ran the replay in my high def, you could see that he got the second foot down, because you could see a couple blades of grass move or whatever. And it was like, he did, it moved. They're going to see it,
There was so much. There was so much to that game. Okay. Let's get back to our list, because we can talk about that game. We can talk about that game every Tuesday night from now to week 1. So what we were running down was we were talking about camp darlings. Who do you think is going to be embraced as everything that they do well, we're going to talk about and be very much discussed once training camp starts based on their play? And we did our top 5. We've done 5, 4, and 3 so far. Yours was Alex Highsmith, Dwayne Haskins, and Jamespierre, correct?
Yes.
Mine was Dwayne Haskins, Shakur Brown, and Kendrick Green. So now we're on to our top 2. Rich,
top 2.
Go ahead. Let us know about your top 2.
Sorry, this is another one I'm putting in there because of what we have seen already coming out. I mean, gee whiz, BTSC was putting stuff out on stuff going on, and everybody is. I'm sorry, I had to go with the number one obvious answer of Najee Harris.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Part of the going to be constant talk there is because he is expected to be in and be the number one guy.
Yes.
And also, kind of like you were saying before, he's to push Frank. Is he going to? What Jeff talked about in his article. Is he going to break Franco's rookie records? And is he a potential rookie of the year candidate? And there's going to be a lot to talk about that, and just everything you're not just even because of what we see on the field. Everything you're hearing about this guy off the field too right now has been, glowing. And if you put the two together, how do you not keep talking about the guy?
Yeah. I went to write his name down, and I'll tell you now, he's not on my list. I went to write his name down, and then I reconsidered. And there was one reason why I did, and I'm going to talk about. I talked myself out of it.
Funny was I started him lower, and then the more I got to thinking about it, I had to move him up higher.
Yeah. Well, here's why: is that he's going to be talked about in training camp. Are we going to be talking about how great he is? Or are we going to be talking about how we're not seeing enough of him to know what we have? Are they not going to, like in preseason games and whatnot? Are you not going to overwhelm him? I'm hoping that that's not the case. But at the same time, 17 games.
I know, but do you know what I expect? I expect, yes, we're going to see very limited Najee Harris in the preseason. But the tiny little bit we see is going to whet our appetites, and we are going to be drooling all over the guy.
So I could see that.
In a very small sample size, we're going to see enough to be like, we have something here. That's why I think we're going to be talking about the guy.
I can completely see that. I'm just saying the only reason why, because this was tough. This was tough coming up with this list. You had to move somebody off. That's the only reason why I bumped him off, is because I went through my list and tried to think, is there a reason why they shouldn't be on the list? And that was the only thing I could come up with, because I had too many guys.
Everybody that's on my list, I had, and I started saying, okay, why would we be hyping this guy up or anything like this? And that was my thought with Najee, is that we're seeing everything going on in practice, and we're going to see stuff in training camp, but we're going to get to the preseason games. I'm with you. I don't expect him to carry the ball more than probably a few times in the game, but I'm still thinking, if he gets 4 or 5 carries, we're going to see things that we're just going to be like, oh yeah, we were smart to take this guy in the first round.
And normally you're like, oh, rookie running back, you're going to see a lot of him in the preseason. No, I don't think you are. And this is why. 2 reasons. I think you might see him every game, but you just might not see a ton of snaps for him. And honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if they have him out there without handing him the ball, just to have him do other things, to give him some more quote unquote snaps without giving him so many carries. And the reason I'm saying this is because 17 games. I mean, I'm probably, one of my predictions later on, I don't know that he plays every game. And that's because running backs don't. And I've talked about that ad nauseum, that running backs miss games. And I would love nothing more than for Najee Harris to play all 17 games as a rookie. But if I'm, this is when the realist comes out with me, and the analytical number cruncher comes out, that statistically he shouldn't. And that's also why my other prediction, non-Steelers wise, is that Derrick Henry is going to miss a significant time this season, because he's been the exception to the whole missing games thing. So it's eventually going to come around. But I can see you there. Totally get you. So you went.
Wes, totally agree. Wes says he knows how to run the ball. Let him work on pass protection.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what we're. Yes.
Let him know. Even if they don't throw him the ball, let him run some routes. Even if he's not the target, and if he's the target, that's great. But things like that, I think that's exactly right. Get him some snaps, but I don't want it to be like sometimes when you put a running back in the game in the preseason, you're like, oh, I want to give them, 5 carries, so they go in for 5 snaps and carry the ball 5 times. That's your veteran running backs. I see Najee Harris getting more snaps. Hopefully twice as many more snaps than he sees touches. I would like to see that in the preseason. So that was your number 2. That was a good one. Yes. You went with the Steelers' first round draft pick.
Yep.
Guess where I'm going?
Oh, you're going with the second
round.
I'm
going with Big Press. I'm going with the last round draft pick.
Okay.
I'm going with the thick kick. I'm going with one Presley Harvin. Is it the third or the second? It's the third, right?
Yep.
Punter, Steelers. People are going to talk about him. Every time he kicks the ball, people are going to talk about him. Every time.
I just can't get excited about.
And they're going to talk about him.
Not even just a kicker, a punter.
Yeah, but seriously, I couldn't put him at number 1, but I had to put him. He's going to get talked about so much. He's going to get talked about a ton. Everything. I mean, the Steelers haven't had that big kicker. They tried to do it with Daniel Sabal. I still can't believe. It's one thing to take a punter in the 4th round. It's another thing to trade up to grab him. And you just didn't know, injuries are injuries. They are what they are. But he's going to get talked about. He's already been talked about a ton, but this is my rookie that's already been talked about a lot that's going to continue to get talked about. I know you rolled your eyes, but I had to do it. I had to do it because it's to me, it's true. It's true. So
suck up.
No. I mean,
you're sucking up to the senior editor. With
I don't have to suck up to the senior editor.
No,
tell him how it is.
I know you well enough.
Yeah. So that's it. So, Rich, are you ready for your number one? The question is, and we'll find out soon. I want to know, has your number one already been mentioned? Is what we're going to find out. All right, Rich, number one.
Number one for me is third round pick Kendrick Green.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
I can see that.
I would not be surprised. This guy, I don't know. I just feel that there's some Mike Webster-esqueness about him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I could see him coming in and dominating so much that Steeler fans here and elsewhere, all around the world, are screaming to start this guy game one. That's how I could see him.
I could see
getting all this talk. Okay.
Yeah.
If he comes out and is really good,
mm-hmm.
that starts the argument. Should he be your game one starter?
Yeah.
That will start all kinds of chatter. Like we could devote a show and a half to.
Exactly.
So
I will tell you this: if he's not the week one starter, I don't want it to be because he's not ready. I want it to be because someone else is playing really well. Also, you know what I'm saying? There's reasons for this. Okay. And I don't want it to be because there's injuries or anything like that. I want it to be because he is just is showing so much that they can't keep on the field. Now, it's still a third round pick that we know how it goes. I've talked about it extensively. So expecting that could leave you open for disappointment. And that's when your miserable Steeler fans are going to come in and say, why in the world are you putting your faith in a third round draft pick to start with? No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying Pouncey wasn't even supposed to start week one his rookie year, and he started all 16. Why? Mm-hmm. Because it was so obvious that he was by far their best option.
Yes.
It would have been a fool to not put him out there. But it was so obvious by far that Kevin Dotson was your best option in that playoff game, and yet he was standing on the sidelines.
Yeah, that one still boggles my mind.
I wonder if that had anything to do with why we have a new offensive line coach. For all I know, it'll be interesting.
You know what? That's an interesting point.
Yep. So I love that, and I put Green on there for a reason. I like even number one.
I don't know if you can tell, but each of my picks, like I had, not only did I come up with, like I have I kind of had a scenario of this is why this person could be on this list and being talked about so much.
Exactly. I love it. Love it. You ready for my number one?
I could wait a little longer. No, just kidding. Go ahead.
My number one.
Can't wait.
Hey, you jumped the gun. I'm not supposed to hit end broadcast yet. All right. My number one has also been mentioned. So who do you think it is?
Hold on. I closed my list here for a second.
I'm not going to make a guess. You picked my number three. I'll pick your number three. My
number three.
One,
you went with
Jamespierre.
Jamespierre.
I think Jamespierre is going to get talked about even more.
If you didn't have him on your top 5 list, I was going to be very, very surprised.
Yeah. No, of course. Yeah. I have him as number one just because, once again, it's the scenario. People are going to be talking about him, and this is not a knock on Cam Sutton, but I think people are going to be talking about him so much that we are going to wonder if he's going to be actually the starter.
Well, you talked about Jeffrey Benedict, saying nope, it's going to be Cam because he's better on the outside, blah blah blah. Okay, but what if Jamespierre is even better on the outside?
Yeah,
then what you do? than Cam Sutton. Then you play Jamespierre as the starter and then drop him down inside in nickel coverage and put Cam on the outside if you have to. It's just going to come down to what do the Steelers have? And I'm with you. I just think this guy could be that kind of guy that really presses to be like, how do we keep him off the field?
Exactly. Well, honestly, he saw very, very limited action last year. Very limited action. So much so, Jeffrey Benedict has poured over every single one of the snaps he's played on defense. Very limited.
Yep.
But every play is fantastic. They're like, oh, he was only targeted one time downfield. Look at what he did on that. Oh, look, he had a tackle for loss on a pass to the outside where he just came in. And it's so funny because now that Jeffrey's brought it up, I'm like, it's almost like he's a bigger version of Mike Hilton who can cover better, but yet when you look at how he flies the ball, here you go. Teaser for Vertex. Jeffrey had to find his worst play. He had to find his worst play. He said, I had to go out of my way, find the worst play Jamespierre put on tape on defense in 2020. And on his worst play, the ball wasn't even thrown to the guy he was guarding.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because there was someone else that looked awful on that play on the Steelers defense. And I'm not going to mention Lustin Jane's name. So, and gave a big reception. So the thing is you're like, you want to see something to be excited about. And you're like, well, he only played a few plays, but they were good plays. So That's the kind of thing we want to do. Of course.
And that's the thing. List. And coming up with these darling, kind of your list of darlings, it's some of it. Yeah. You do have to stretch it a little bit. You do have to say, it could happen. It might not happen. It's,
yeah.
If there were 5 obvious ones out there, great. We'd pick them, and the show would have been over at 5 minutes.
But no, we talked about other stuff for the first 17.
So we still would have been done.
Exactly.
Well, no, wait a minute.
We would have been done 5 minutes with that.
Dave can't finish anything in 5 minutes except a great big helping of mashed potatoes and gravy.
Oh, that's true. I could. No, you forget. I was challenged to eat a dozen donuts in 5 minutes.
Did you make it?
Oh, I did it in half the time.
I don't
half the
remember that
time.
challenge.
Half the time. So,
okay.
Yeah. But I had to eat them like freshly baked, straight out of the glaze from a local donut shop here where I live. That's very well known. In this area because it's local. But yeah, I crushed that. That was back when I was teaching my students. And you know what? And I had already had all you could eat soup and dinner at Olive Garden that night and still went donuts 2.5 minutes. So
sorry, I'm going to bring this one up. Yeah, Brian Blackstock says biscuits and gravy. Actually, that would be me, Brian. I don't want to finish the biscuits and gravy in 5 minutes. That's one of my favorites.
Are you ready? The reason Jamespierre was number 1 on my list, when I figured out the 5 players I was going to go with, then I had to put them in order.
Right.
The reason Jamespierre went number 1 is he's the only player on my list who has had NFL snaps, and you can't find anything glaringly bad with them, even if it was only a few of them.
Yeah.
Because the only other person on my list that had NFL snaps was Haskins, and trust me, you can find plenty of bad stuff on him. So I'm like, the chant, and people are like, yeah, I know someone, I can't remember who it was, said about, maybe we should pump the brakes. I understand. He's an undrafted free agent. But the Steelers put him on the 53 last year in a training camp where we didn't see anything. We're like, wow. I was shocked. I had him pegged for the practice squad, maybe because some people were talking about him. But and then I had him on my projected inactives to start the season. Nope. Active every game.
Yep.
And, as the gunner, and it was just, I can't get over. I can't believe that he was able to get to where he was last year. And I'm like, if he did that without a training camp, without a preseason games, just think of what it could be this year. And you know what? It might not be. But you know what? It might not be that way with anybody. You could take any player on any team and figure out why they might not be nearly as good this year. Sure. Anybody from any team. That's
why
what you
we
can do.
sat here and came up with
Yeah.
reasons why they might be really talked about.
Exactly. You know,
Our list
I'm
is,
sorry.
you know, subjective.
Tom Brady could go into training camp and suddenly not be able to throw the ball more than 15 yards, you know, because he's 72 years old. You know, that can happen. You know, anything is possible. That even, you know, I don't want to say any Steelers, just because, you know, something could happen with Aaron Donald where he deals with a minor injury that just nags him to where he is only a shadow of himself in 2020. You know, anything could happen. So the question is, do you believe that it's always going to be the bad that's happening or always the good that's happening? We talked about that earlier. So me, I always try to look at what we could see from somebody. And I'm excited. And like I said, it wasn't that with the reason I left Najee off my list wasn't because I thought he wouldn't do well, is because I thought we might not see enough of him and people might be frustrated with it. Anybody else that was close on your list?
A ton
Yeah.
of guys worth talking about.
Q from the U was one for me that
I was actually surprised. I thought he might make your list.
Yeah, but I thought these other guys.
I thought about him too.
Yeah. Have a better chance of making the 53. I mean, not that he won't, but I think he will.
I thought about Ant Mac.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that.
Yep, would have been a good one to talk about. Technically, and as much as I'd say I hate going to a third-year guy, technically you could throw Devin Bush out there because of coming off the injury.
Yeah.
After, you know, we saw such the big jump to the beginning of the year last year, but then the injury, then coming off the injury, everything's there. I also want to point out that
how about Robert Spillane possibly playing next to him?
Correct.
People might start talking about Spillane being next to Bush rather than anything else. Yeah. Go ahead.
You know, I talked about my list and how I had, you know, scenarios set up for why we could be buzzing on this guy and hyped up. I could come up with the same guy why we could be buzzing on him, not hyped up, but buzzing on him, you know, WTF kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, you could give a scenario where then you're the same reason you could be buzzing the wrong direction.
You know what? We might have to keep that in mind. That might have to be a topic for another show. Is instead of camp studs, camp duds. Who's someone that you have high expectations?
But the same thing is, I could take the same guys on the list and list them and tell you why they could potentially be a dud.
Yeah. See, here's another one. Buddy Johnson could get some buzz. I forgot about him. That's a great one. That really is.
Very good.
So, Rich, are you ready? We're going to have to do it.
Yep.
This is final question time. Now, remember the rules. Don't put it out there until I actually put the question in there. I will bring it up. You get one answer. One answer. You want to give a big, long explanation? I might not click on you. Or if I do, I might just say your answer because we're going to run through these. And then if we have to, maybe comment and a little bit on what you say. But you know what the question is? Who is your camp darling?
Yep.
Our list of 5. You get to give your top one. Who's your number
top
one? So, and already in here is Andrew Obar says Haskins.
Yep.
So we both had him on our lists.
Yes,
and I could completely see that he could be a darling, but like I said, he wasn't as high on mine because that's assuming he's going to play great. Okay. So, this is an interesting one.
That's a very interesting one.
Antoine Brooks Jr. Now remember, he's the only member of the 2020 draft class who did not initially make the 53-man roster. So, he was in the practice squad and then was pulled up a couple of times and then got elevated a couple of times and then actually got signed to the active roster.
Yep.
So that's a good one. Okay. AJ says, got to be Pierre. BMK, Bully Mob Kennel, artist formerly known as Solarverse. He says Pierre. Okay. I just went. Wes says wide receiver Tyler Simmons. I'm trying to remember exactly. I think he was I got to remember something about him. So Steelers, we might come back to Tyler Simmons. Okay. Steelers stick kick. That's Presley Harvin III. Brian Blackstock says Jamespierre. Alfonso Lilly says Chase Claypool. I never thought about going with Chase Claypool. But
I actually had thought about him in some ways, but
I mean, he was talked about so much last year during camp. You almost have to be like, can he really? He'd have to be doing so much more than what he did before. But it's not out of the question. But I see your thinking. Okay, Bernardo Vasquez, Anthony McFarland.
There you go.
Russ says mine's Haskin too. Okay, he says Tyler W says Green, being wishful thinking. And this Green, just so you know, I've had to look it up so many times, does not have an E in his name. And Daredevil.
Frank Webb. Hold on.
What?
I got to go back and edit you there, editor.
What?
I liked how you said, and just so you know that this Green doesn't have an E in his name.
Oh, at the end of his name.
There you go. Because otherwise,
Mr. Technicality. I know what you mean. He only has two. Okay. Let's see. So for those of you that don't understand the Frank Webb reference, it's a good one. Okay. Brian Brown says Quincy Roche. Oh, Jennifer says Zach Banner.
You know what? That's actually that's one I didn't consider. That was another one probably going to talk about.
I should probably, I almost put Carlos Davis on my list. Last year, 7th pick. Yeah. That all of a sudden he starts being the player that the Steelers saw in him that a lot of other people didn't. Okay. Jared Devil then gave us a real answer of Mark Gilbert. That's the cornerback out of Duke that was going to be like a day 1 or day 2 pick after his sophomore year. Just looked phenomenal, and then dislocated his hip. Then had an ankle injury on top of that. A lot of potential where you know what he could have been, but you just don't know how the body responds to those things. So, and I just skipped ahead. Okay.
Your next one would be this one. AJC actually said
Carlos Davis.
You're saying Carlos Davis.
Okay.
And I looked down and was like, oh, he's like right down here. So
yeah. Kathy Forrid says Quincy Roche. People are saying goodbye to Andrew because he had to roll out of here. They said about Simmons after being a part of UGA's pro day. Yeah, he was one of the 2020. There were several. I couldn't remember which pro day he was because there were several of them that if they weren't with the team that came out in 2020 into the NFL, but they weren't on an active roster, they could go back and do a pro day at various places since they didn't get to do them last year. So yeah, he was the one at Georgia's. I think he was the first one they signed out of all those. I believe
players. So. Yes.
I'm going to bring it up. Okay. Russ says just for Jeff, Jordan Berry.
Earlier when I said Dave was sucking up to Jeff, Russ, you are trying to, Jeff would start referring to Russ as former member of the BTS.
Yeah, family. I was going to say former commentator.
Yeah.
He might have put you in a timeout for that, Russ. Jared Cherubin, he says Q from the U, Quincy Roche. Wes, I'm not going to bring it up, but he did say he thought of other people like Buddy Johnson or Trey Norwood. See, Trey Norwood is another one there that I could see is interesting. Ron says Shakur Brown.
Yep.
So that's a good one. So those are some good answers. There's lots of possibilities. And you know what? It very well could be nobody that was mentioned. I would not be shocked. I mean, and the thing is, I will tell you where they will be mentioned for sure. And that'll be on Michael Beck's and mine Steelers trifecta, where we're going through the entire 90-man roster, 3 of them at a time, counting down the training camp. So you will know who everyone, and watch the Steelers make a move and screw it up. But it is what it is. And they will obviously, the Steelers will be making moves during camp. They always do. So it'll be interesting. I have another question that I got to remind you of after the show. That's going to be a really good one to ask at some point. So,
okay.
But this was a lot of fun tonight. It was a lot of fun when Michael was with you. That was a fantastic show. When I was with Jeffrey, we had a blast. That was great. Having Sam Highsmith on last week was great. And it was really nice then getting back to
nice to get back to what we do.
So
And
lots of fun.
again, hey, thanks live chat, because really they were live. Not that we had a ton of people in here tonight, but they were in there and they were lively and kind of kept us going. Actually, at times kept us off topic.
Yeah, kept us off topic. Hey, if we were on topic all the time, it wouldn't be the Scho Bro Show. It would be. I can't say the hangover because that's not true. It would be. It would be the Friday night six pack because Tony.
There you go.
Well, when he's by himself, he gets to stay
There
on
you
his
go.
topic as much as he wants. So I'm listing these other shows. Make sure you check them all out. We are still coming strong with the content. We have all the same podcasts in just the audio only and our live shows that we have every day. We will be adding some more podcasts when the season comes around. So that's going to be lots of fun. Make sure you're checking out. They changed the name from the locker room to the green room on the app where Jeff Hartman does his live show. He did that earlier tonight. So if you're not part of that, make sure you know that's another way that you can reach out and be a part of that show as well. That's usually around 7:30s on Tuesdays before we go. And of course, make sure you're checking out BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers. We really are still bringing the content in what is the biggest downtime of the calendar year for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I've got a teaser to throw out there.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Because I was going to let you do some closing thoughts.
Teaser for next week's show.
Okay.
All right. So next week's show, there will be an announcement coming. Mm-hmm. This announcement has something to do with a little bit of a social experiment that myself and the Oracle, Dave Schofield, and Scho 2.0, Kyle Schofield, that we are going to be taking part in when we go on vacation. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to give you a little teaser on that right now. But the best part of it, just so you can get a little bit of idea what's going on, is going to involve hashtag Hey Kyle.
Hey Kyle. Yep.
We'll talk about it more next week.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. Good teaser. So, yes, we will definitely talk about it next week.
But until then, can't wait.